All right, here we are. So, welcome everybody back to the Imaginarium. I have the immense honor of having JANNY WURTS on my channel today. And she is the author of To Ride Hell's Chasm, which was recommended to me by Philip Chase, and also the Wars of Light and Shadow series, which is on my TBR list. So, maybe you would like to tell everybody about yourself.
There's
More.
so much information out there already. I don't know what there is to say except I don't golf and I don't dance.
All right.
Just about everything else goes.
Yes, horseback riding. I understand.
Yeah, everything from wilderness to running the telescopes in the planetarium while I was in college for the astronomy department. So it's pretty full spectrum. If I was curious about it, I chased it and I did it, and that still holds today. So ask, and you never know what kind of a treasure box you'll get into. Because I tend not to want to do things by half measures.
I can appreciate that. I have the same kind of philosophy. If I find something interesting, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole all the way to see where it leads. So, so I guess we can start off with what I just recently finished, your book To Ride Hell's Chasm. Um, and for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons meets Taken, in the sense that you have a kingdom where a princess is been captured, and you have this captain of the guard named, is it Mikhail? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, Mikhail.
Mikhail. Okay, that's what I thought it was. And he is clearly the best man for the job to go find her. However, he faces all sorts of conflict outside the kingdom, but also inside the kingdom. And he's facing discrimination because of where he's from, despite the fact that he is a 1000% badass dude. And so it's kind of starts off with a classic save the princess kind of thing, but then it evolves into this really intense adventure. And I was curious, I had a couple of questions about it that popped up as I was reading it. Was number one, the way you described the kingdom, Cecily, I think is how you say that. Was that inspired by Switzerland?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty
So
much very insular, very protected, very much able to be isolated from the rest of the world's problems.
yeah, surrounded by
But
mountains.
not necessarily the financial capital of Europe.
Well, okay.
Nobody's hiding their money there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I definitely have been to Switzerland. I have seen the landscape there, but so it is somewhat styled after that because I wanted a very insular culture
Hmm.
that's unable to assimilate foreign thought, foreign ideas, foreign threats.
Hmm.
They're so isolated and so self-focused on their own little corner of the world, they can't conceive of what is about to come down and happen to their kingdom.
Right. And it's a lot that comes down on
It's a
that.
lot.
Yeah.
And
And
so throw into the blender everything about modern society that I absolutely hate.
yeah.
Everything that makes me freaking furious that I want to rip the walls down and say, let's just build this better.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of my next question. Was there's the passion that is under the surface of the intensity there. I was thinking this has to be inspired by something that is intensely meaningful, or like you say, it kind of just pisses you off. I forget, maybe it was George Orwell that said you don't want to write until you're really angry about something, something like
Well,
that.
that isn't always true, but in this case, certainly this book was being written right at the time of 9/11. I was angry about bunches of things. One was that I was halfway through the big series and people were complaining I was never going to finish it. I didn't know what I was doing, that I couldn't land the thing. I had no clue. And I actually spent 40 years planning that series before I sold the first book. So I was so angry, I said, I'm going to write a 5.5 day plot and put it all in there in 5.5 days
Yeah.
and stick the landing and finish it. So that was number one. I was pissed off at certain reviewers who didn't bother to give the author the benefit of the doubt or trust,
Yeah.
and was equating other things that were going on in the field that had nothing to do with me with my work. So what do you do with that kind of anger? You put it into something creative.
Yeah.
I was very angry because I spent lots of time working with people in situations where I was working with other people of other racial profiles. I did a lot of world travel when I was young. I poured every penny I had into world travel, all different countries, so that I had the perspective to write the fantasy I wanted to write. I figured I couldn't do it with an average US view of being brought up here in all this privilege.
Yeah.
So I put myself in many, many situations, and I actually tried as best I could to listen to what the people were saying. So the fury that hit me was, here we live in the age of information. Here we have tremendously educated people from all over the world, and we still are stuck viewing things the way people viewed them 200 and 300 years ago or more.
Mhm.
And we don't bother to take apart history. We don't bother to take apart the East India Company and what it did to government. We're still doing the same crap today.
Amen.
So I said, okay, we're going to take a fish out of water. We're going to get this guy that comes from another background and yet doesn't, because he was raised as an orphan.
Mhm.
He understands this society. Throw him into this and have him be the most knowledgeable guy on the scene, but nobody will credit, both because of his racial background and because of his foreign.
Mhm.
The foreigners are definitely not the accepted people here, but they're the ones that know.
Yeah.
So that constant friction of putting down the people who actually have the smarts to solve a problem and not listening to them and listening to the idiots.
Yeah. Yeah. We may
So
have
you
that
can
same
see
problem.
all those things, and then you throw onto the top of that. I absolutely detest the trope of the princess is into a forced marriage. And oh, this and that, and oh, she doesn't want to marry this guy, and oh, then she falls in love with him, or oh, the princess falls in love with the captain of the guard, whatever. I hated all those tropes. So I
Mhm.
said, I'm going to flip this on its ear. She ran away. She didn't get captured. She ran away. She was the one who saw the problem going on first, and she ran away from the perfect political and perfect romantic marriage. Everything was beautiful on the surface. The wedding cake was perfect.
Yeah.
And she ran away. Why did she run? So it's part mystery, part this, part that. So I turned a lot of tropes on their head
Yeah.
and then throw in a bunch of metaphysics, throw in a bunch of this and that, and stir. And everything but the kitchen sink and electricity are in there.
Yes. Yes. You could, yes, I'm glad you're describing it, because you can really see, you can see that under the surface there with the, not only the passion at the stupid shit that just really got on your nerves, but, and showing how ludicrous it is because of how they, it's amazing that they make it as far as they do. And I don't want to spoil too much, but the kingdom, the way they treat the one guy who really hasn't any clue as to how to deal with their problem that they're facing.
Not just him. There are other ones,
Yeah.
other foreigners living there.
Yes. Yes. That's right. Yes.
But the other thing is, I wanted to show it in a way where the characters in that insular culture and kingdom were not the bad guys.
Yeah.
Taskin has an impeccable sense of justice, and he is rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
Even when rule of law violates the spirit of the law, he represents that rule of law, and he was not going to deviate from that. I wanted to show the women in that insular society. They have their heroic moment. They
Mm-hmm.
aren't all completely stupid. So I wanted to create a pace where it wasn't just a hero. The whole cast is involved with this problem, and without any one of them, they all would have failed.
Yeah. And they,
So that concept of there is no one leader, one seat, one viewpoint, one anything that's going to win the day. It takes a village.
yes. Yeah. You have to, it's not kind of the lone hero facing against the entire everything kind of idea at all. It's there. I mean, you have the warrior, but he's only one piece of the puzzle.
He plays a huge role, but without the people back in the kingdom holding it together, the kingdom would have fallen.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that definitely tells the thought process behind that.
And, that kingdom had a rather patriarchal culture. However, the women weren't dummies.
Yeah.
The women, in many ways, knew what was going on faster than the men did.
Yeah.
in that culture. So I wanted to reverse. I like to pull those little reverses left, right, and center where don't point your finger and say that person's the idiot, because they aren't necessarily the idiot. Bertara comes sailing in the first one, and Taskin's opinion of her is dead accurate. She's worth 10 berserkers and a room full of intelligence. It's, you know, she's tapped into, maybe not in a way that you respect, but she gets what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it really shows the problem is the idea that only like traditionally masculine ways of dealing with problems of fighting and punching and carrying on. If you only value that, you're lost, and that you
Yep.
have to see the value of the other ways of engaging with the enemy and with each other. And if you miss that, you're toast.
You know, the way the women bring the bread, and they're taking it for the poor, and they hide the defense.
Yeah.
They were front and center, and they paid for it. But, you know, so I didn't want anybody in the entire cast to be the idiot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So that one you wrote relatively quickly, I would think. Then
It wrote like a house burning down. I had a draft in 8 months, which is really fast
yeah,
for me.
yeah, that is pretty quick. Um, and now, okay, so now the something you said a minute ago really caught my attention. That you said you'd been planning a series for 40 years.
More than that, actually. 1972 was the year that I got the conceptual idea for the Wars of Light and Shadow.
Okay.
And I built the world, and I built a career because I knew I couldn't start the career with that big, ambitious project. I built the world, I built the language, I built the back history. There's so much more to that universe than I ever show in that one little slice of history that becomes the 11-book series.
Mm.
And the first book was published in 1993 as a complete, I turned it in as a finished volume.
Like
the manuscript for volume 1 was finished, and I had draft all the way up through book 6, and heavy notes for the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. That really resonates with me because I got the inspiration for my own series that you're reading, book 1 of King of the Forgotten Darkness, way back in the 90s. Now, 1972, I was a toddler, but I have been planning and working on this for years and years and years. Not as long as you, though. Not as long as you were working on yours. But I think you're the first person I've run across that planned that far in advance of publishing the first volume.
I wanted to do the idea justice.
Yeah.
And I knew I had just graduated high school. I knew I did not have the life experience to write that book yet. Yeah. And that's when I started traveling the world to gain the perspective. So I went many trips, and on a dime came back to New York City once off a boat with a dime in my pocket to call my parents. So I'd work my summers, I'd work through my college year, I would work a paying job during college to pay for the travel to gain the life experience. To write this, there were offshore scenes that required major weather, so I learned how to navigate, and then I went sailing on offshore sailboats and crewed. So I have a lot of logged offshore miles on period vessels or small yachts in order to be able to write those scenes. So I wanted that feeling of putting you there. And so also gaining control of my craft to be able to handle something that big so it didn't just sprawl. Oh, I'm bored today, so I'm going to add a new element to this. No, I kept it very tightly controlled.
Yeah, that's a problem, and I think you see with some other big, even the big names nowadays, it seems like they just meander.
Well, and the other thing is you have to build to do a story that big, because it was originally planned as an epic in 5 arcs. Mm-hmm. You are going to age as you write it. Your life perspective is going to expand. Your what was cool when you were 20 is not going to be cool when you're 50 or 60. And you may be turning in the last volume in your 60s or late 70s, pushing 70. Mm-hmm. Whatever, your life perspective is going to shift. And so you have to build that in. And one of the ways to build that in is have the characters grow and their life perspective shifts also. So a lot of these writers, they start off and they write like 60 until they're in their mid 30s. And then suddenly, here you are in your midlife, starting to look at 40. And what's cool isn't cool anymore.
Yeah.
And finding that new value and making it keep going. And so it's hard not to lose interest in a story that you built too tight. So you have to build that expansion of consciousness from your perspective as an artist into a work that you're going to be working on over decades.
So how did
So
you
starting it too young would have been a mistake.
Yeah. Okay. So you worked mainly on the planning phase, knowing ahead of time.
I worked on the story, but I also worked on how did the history create this moment?
Yeah.
We're talking multiple planets.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking this thing branches out in directions that I never used for the story, but I know where everything came from.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking eras on this planet where there were no human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So the different epochs that preceded this. So I understood intricately what I was showing of this piece of history without anything extraneous. I don't bother to use all that. And I also developed the naming system and the language that built it. So it went a lot of different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted that feeling of authenticity. It's a really lived in place.
Right.
So there were life experiences I had to gain in order to work that, and I had to get control of my craft. So I started out writing much simpler books.
So you had the idea to this, but then you felt like I don't have the experience yet, so I'm going to work on these other things and work towards that. But
It starts with a very simple conflict and it spirals over itself. So as your perspective widens, it changes what you thought you saw in the first book. And all of the events in the first book, you're going to look at from one perspective when you start. By the time you reach the final book, you're going to hark back to those original events. And so much more is in there. It was all in there on the first page. But because of your bias, because of what you expected to see, because of what other fantasies teach you to expect to see, because of what history trains you to expect to see, because of culturally where your blinders are.
Mm-hmm.
As the layers peel back, everything, all of what you thought you saw happened, even what you thought was the good side or what side you sympathize with will change. Because where you align yourself depends on your perspective. Mm-hmm. And the greater your perspective, the more you realize that all situations are way more complex than our single viewpoint can encompass.
Mm-hmm.
We're back to Hell's Chasm again.
Right.
It takes a village to really understand an event, but everybody spouts their opinion.
Yeah. And without any sort of ability to listen to the other viewpoints, you never get anywhere. You don't take advantage of that potential that's there within the system.
You're dumping the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, well,
every minute of every day.
Yes. Yes. I definitely see that in my line of work as well.
But there's a value to that because we're given a singular consciousness for a reason, and that is that everybody's viewpoint is totally individual and how we shape that. That journey is completely individual. The way you perceive something, nobody else sees it the way you do. So it's our strength and it's our downfall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like you've woven in your proposed solution to that challenge that we have as humans into your fantasy narrative, like showing rather than telling exactly that if you don't, you need that individual view, but you also need to share it and be able to hear others. And then when you do that and you hit that sweet spot, then that's our best chance of making it. You think it's accurate?
Yeah. Well, it's so easy to polarize and say an eye for an eye, but then all of us are blind. Right. To quote the lyric from a very famous song about the troubles in Ireland, where the wrong person gets murdered by the wrong side.
Yeah.
because we don't understand. And, you know, story is one way that we can understand other cultures, because our mythos is woven in, what we believe is woven into our stories. If we could understand their stories, we wouldn't have any wars. So storytelling, I think, is by far and away neglected for the power that it has.
Well, I often say on my channel that before there were mental health providers and psychiatrists, there were storytellers. And that's our most ancient way of understanding the world. This is what neuroscience shows us. And that it's like you say, it's also one of the best paths for healing and understanding. We use this. And yet, like you say, it oftentimes gets neglected, or especially in fantasy, it gets pigeonholed into just pulp entertainment that's really frivolous and meaningless.
It's not meaningless at all.
No, absolutely not. No.
If we only lived inside the quote reality envelope, we would hit entropy real fast, because nothing new would ever happen. Everything good and everything bad in any society came from the imagination first. You have to. You have to step outside your own shoes. You have to step outside your own ideas. You have to play that what if game, because that is where all the magic happens.
Yeah. That's very true.
You know, if Ursula Le Guin said fantasy is the language of dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Dreams are powerful. And I'm not talking about trying to decipher what happens when you sleep. I'm talking about conscious dreaming, where you say, you know what, this sucks. We could do that instead.
Using the imagination.
Imagination is everything. Without it, we are nothing.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean,
we're something that eats and shits. Without imagination, you don't have anything. You really don't. There's no sparkle to anything.
Not that you need the confirmation, but I think modern psychology and neuroscience are on your side on that one, because imagination is behind.
I sent myself to the Soviet Union just after Nixon opened up the ability for Americans to even visit there. And let me tell you, these yo-yos running around today who say, oh, you know, this is communism and this is, you know, these are Leninists, they're out of their fucking mind. If you had ever seen what the Soviet Union looked like, if you ever went there, where the state decided who was the artists, where the state decided who was this and who was that, it's like living with every single nerve in your body completely numb. There's no color, there's no competition, there's no friction. You walk into the supermarket and 2 companies designed the labels to all the food cans. And everything was either green and gray or yellow and pink. Little checks. It's like Novocaine. You come back to this country, everything is loud, everything is noisy, everything is chaotic. But you know what? You can choose. You can choose to tune this in or tune that out. You can walk into that supermarket with all those loud colors and all that advertising hitting you in the face, and you can choose. But without that ability to choose, and the most graphic example I can describe is everything was gray. You went into the bookshop, and at that time I was looking at children's illustrators, and I looked at what they were selling as children's books to Soviet children growing up, and the state decided who was the artist. So it looked like cookie cutter. You couldn't tell one artist from another. They were all the same. One little guy in the little white margins managed to put a little bit of something original, but everything else was just cookie cutter. Until I opened one and I go, whoa, what's this? And I asked the bookshop owner, and she said, that's a classic fantasy, and those illustrations were done in the 1900s, and they are so attached to the story that we won't change them. So it was creatively fucking dead. Excuse my French.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go there where somebody else makes your choices. You don't want to go there where you have AI making the choices, because it's only drawing from what's been done before.
Yeah.
It's the human mind can recombine things in ways that has never been done.
Yeah.
And you're selling it down the river, and you're selling the ability to do that down the river, because you know, as a neuroscientist, if you don't use that neural connection, it's gone. It eliminates.
Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it.
Well, I get a lot of people that ask me questions about because I do a lot of videos on like dreams and understanding them. And people sometimes say, is it true that you can't dream about a face you've never seen before? And I'm like, of course it is. You can dream about literally anything imaginable, stuff nobody's ever seen before. That's how powerful it is. That's how profound it is. And without it, like you say, we're nothing. We have no, there's people who have the areas of the brain, like what they call the default mode network. There's certain key areas that are, if they get damaged, you're impaired in your ability to imagine it, but it also affects your ability to plan, your ability to remember, and your ability to even form a coherent identity. It's everything. It's absolutely everything.
But what does our society spend so much time doing? They put you in school, and the first thing you're taught is don't use your imagination.
Yeah.
Do what the rest of the class is doing. They've eliminated the arts. They've eliminated music.
Mm-hmm.
Be still. Don't talk back. Don't disrupt the class.
Mm-hmm.
We all are doing standardized tests now.
Yeah.
No working around the edges of anything. No. It's heartbreaking.
It is.
Because now we're taught imagination is only for children or for people who are senile or women.
Right. There's that whole...
It's denigrated, and it's so upside down wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's actually studies that show that the children's creativity has waned significantly in the past, like the 20 years.
No kidding, with the little, with phones and tablets.
Yeah.
And also Sesame Street. The teachers who were teaching at the time Sesame Street came out said they could tell to the day when they got Sesame Street kids that were brought up watching Sesame Street, because their attention spans were 3 minutes.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because they put something new up every 3 minutes, and those kids could no longer focus for a half an hour or an hour.
That's very interesting.
And it's accelerating even faster. Now they're saying to script writers in movies, you have to repeat the plot 4 times in dialogue because you assume that people are on their phones at the same time.
Yeah, I've heard that, especially about streaming services.
What?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have that. We don't even have TV. I don't have streaming or TV.
Yeah, but I mean, I've heard that said that they're encouraging writers to beat the viewer over the head with what's going on because we're going to assume that they're not paying attention to it.
It's, you know, we started dumbing down back in, I'm trying to think, probably late 70s or 80s when they said to the news, you can't write past 3rd grade English because we want to expand our readership. And right then and there, we started murdering vocabulary. If you read letters that were written during the Civil War of basic people, basic education, common soldiers writing home to their families, their vocabulary is so much bigger than what we have going today. Even when I was growing up, and I grew up reading the library, I read all the hardback books in the library. So people say, oh, you must be in and out of textbooks to get your words. No, I learned them by reading.
Well, you said
so. Yeah, the precision of language that we are losing day by day by day, we're pulling the juice right out of that colorful supermarket where it's all hitting you in the face and it's garish. But by God, you can choose, and you can choose very precisely what suits your taste or what suits that scene. So when people say, well, you better had poo-hoo-hoo, I can't read your book's vocabulary, get off it. Go away. I'm not writing for you, number one. And number two, I didn't grow up with a phone in my hand where I could look it up immediately.
Yeah, that's true.
So what's your problem here?
And you sent me to the dictionary a couple of times with To Ride Hell's Chasm, but I loved that, actually. And that's not easy to do with me.
Why do they always pick on the women sending you to the dictionary? Because guess what? Gene Wolfe doesn't cut his vocabulary. Neither does Donaldson. He doesn't cut his vocabulary.
Yeah.
So why is it the women that aren't supposed to use these words? Because you look up the reviews of those books, Guy Kay, come on.
Yeah.
They never complain about the complexity of his prose.
Yeah.
So I'm just laughing at these people going, you know, and it's much more like, no, it wasn't that you had to go to the dictionary. It was that you had to admit that maybe a woman made you do it. I don't know. But I'm looking at, you know, contemporaries of mine who are publishing, Stephen Erickson, they don't complain about his prose being too complex.
That's true. And it is very complex.
And it's all over the map, you know, but I
Oh,
get
yeah.
it bang, 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 bang. You know, every third review, there's somebody going, I'm too
Really
lazy to look up anything. Go ahead,
interesting.
check it out, read it.
Oh, I believe
This
you.
prose is not for everybody.
Yes, yes. I have
Okay,
read, that's true. I have read that. And it is ridiculous that they single you out for that and not,
I'm not writing for dummies.
no. And that's good. We
And I'm
don't need
not
any more of
knocking
that.
books that are written for pure popcorn reads because I read them too. We
Sure.
all have our airplane reads or our beach reads or the day where the stress is just over the top and we want to read something simple that we can just drop those stress hormones right down.
Right.
Reading is a benefit. It's better than aspirin
Yeah.
for doing that. It's a benefit to your health to read a book that is going to not challenge your envelope. But I'm not that writer that's going to write that kind of book.
Right.
There's plenty that are, and I read them with great enjoyment. So
Yeah.
I'm not being snotty saying all books have to be. They don't. There's a book for every occasion. There's a book for every person. We're individuals.
Yeah.
But by narrowing the spectrum of what's available or shitting on what you don't happen to like, I don't care if somebody reads romantasy. If that's their thing, go do it.
Yeah.
Why do we have to have only this and piss on that? It's like it's a big tent, people.
Yeah. That completely agree with that.
I
Because
would say, how many new authors did Danielle Steele's income to the publisher enable them to publish?
good
Leave
question.
it alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Might not be your taste, but guess what? Here we are in that loud supermarket where all that noise is coming at our faces. You get to choose.
Yeah.
But if you start eliminating any part of that spectrum, you've cut something else off that's vital to the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you would think with the explosion of information technology and self-publishing and everything else that you would have more voices and more diversity. And maybe
We do, but we don't have the tolerance. The tolerance is gone.
yeah.
The voices and the diversity has always been there. When people go, oh, books that were published pre-2000, wrong. Pre-1960, wrong. If you read what was published then, there is every kind of diversity.
Mm.
Every kind of diversity. I don't care if you're talking race. I don't care if you're talking sexuality. I don't care what difference you throw into the pie. It was there, but it was a niche market because it was harder to reach. It did not explode in numbers like the Tolkien clone did.
Mm-hmm.
But our tolerance has just become this. If it doesn't suit me, it's not good for everybody else. And that's how we get poisonous fandoms.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's like, why? Why bother? Why waste your life?
Mm-hmm.
I have opinions about very popular books, but you won't see me going and pissing on somebody else's parade because my perspective is mine. What I brought to the table to that book affected and colored what was on the page.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And
like,
that experience is not somebody else's experience. So let them come to that page without my expectations thrown on top of it.
mm-hmm.
It's not right. Trust the reader, trust the author,
Mm-hmm.
and know that some books are not going to work for you when you're 16. They'll work for you very well when you're 36.
Mm-hmm.
So just because at 16 you hated it doesn't mean it had no value. It meant you were in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong perspective to understand what that author was putting on the page, and you overwrote the words that the author actually put
Yeah.
with your own view.
Oh, narrow view. Yes, frequently.
And the younger you are, the more you're going to do it.
I noticed when I was kind of looking through the reviews of To Ride Hell's Chasm, there was a number of like lower view. I often do this. I'll look and see what the 1-star reviews are saying as well as the 5-star, just to get the point of view, because I can tell if I read a bunch of 1-star reviews that just sound to me off, like they've completely missed the point, then I know that's actually something that tells me that the book is something I might be interested in. And that's exactly what happened with yours, because I read this and I'm like, where in the heck did they get that from reading this book? You know, like it was so, you know, I'm sure you've read those, some of them anyway, and they're just frustrating because they clearly were not paying attention.
So
No, but
So
I mean,
I
right,
wasn't
right.
writing for them.
That's true. No,
Right?
we're writing
They're
for them.
not going to
Exactly.
focus, and they're not going to read what's on the page, or it doesn't agree with them. Fine.
Yeah.
They can choose something else, because that is what a free will society looks like.
Mhm.
And there will be the perfect set of books for them to read right now, whatever that may be. But I'm not going to prejudge somebody because they didn't like something I wrote, because 50% of what they brought to the table wasn't the words I put down.
Yeah. Right.
I'll give you two fun little anecdotes
Mm.
that happened, both to do with fan mail.
Okay.
I got two pieces of very vitriolic fan mail on the same day. And this was back in the days when you got written mail. It wasn't email, or it wasn't a bad review, or it wasn't venting on some forum in the internet. They actually wrote you bitterly complaining. And when I get a written letter, I assume that somebody was so pissed off that I'm going to respect the fact that they took their time to write me.
Yeah.
So I wrote them both back a very similar note, which said, "Thank you very much for taking the time to let me know how my book made you feel. It's not a light thing that you felt strongly enough that you felt moved to share what you felt with me. And I respect the fact that you were moved that strongly that you sent this note." Sent the two letters out. Back comes two more letters. The first one said, "I reread what I sent to you, and now I'm really embarrassed because I had a really horrible day. Everything went wrong, and I was just dumping all of my angst on you, and it wasn't fair. And I apologize."
Okay.
The second one wrote back a 4-page letter telling me that all the things I did wrong in my manuscript, or in that book, was what her father told her expressly not to do.
Interesting.
My father taught that this was bad, that you shouldn't write this way, that too many words, too many notes, I don't know, whatever it was.
Too many notes, right? Most yeah.
So, she obviously was feeling punished, because at one time she wrote from the heart and her father came down on her with both feet. So how dare I get
How
away with
dare
it?
you not be that?
So, I feel really sad for her. She's in a box. She is trapped.
Yeah.
And she never outgrew her father saying bad girl.
Yeah.
She never grew up and re-examined what she was told and said, "You know what, that tape loop sucks. Let's burn it and flush it.
Yeah.
We're done."
I would have done
So,
that in therapy with her if I had a chance.
How many bad reviews are exactly that?
Yeah.
They're throwing the fact they were punished for imagination, for having a vocabulary, for having a idea that was outside of a culture, and they're damning you because you had the chutzpah to have the freedom to say, "Fuck you, I'm doing it anyway." Excuse my French again. But I've been a sailor, so I'm not going to cut my language.
I'm a military vet, so I've heard
there
it all.
you go. All right. Outward Bound grad too. We weren't being shot at chest deep in a swamp, but the language wasn't pretty. You said it like it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, so many people are lashing out because they're in their own little box and they never had the courage to break the envelope and leave the pack. Yeah. They never had the courage to dare to let anyone tell them they were wrong. And a lot of times when you're creating, you have to tell 90% of the world, maybe 98% of the world is going to tell you you're wrong. You're not writing for them. You're writing for the 2%.
Yeah. The 2 that'll get it. That'll really resonate with them.
Or why bother? You're writing something that's so mediocre that there is no edge to it whatsoever.
And it'll be forgotten tomorrow.
Yeah, if you have no enemies, what was that saying? If you have no enemies, you never lived, you never stood for anything. Because the minute you take a stance, there's going to be somebody wanting to topple it.
Yeah, I think it was E.O. Wilson. He said, "I've been blessed with brilliant enemies." That was one of my favorite quotes by him. So why fantasy for you? Like, why do you write that genre?
Because I can take issues and write them with the gloves off. I can handle any point of religion. I can handle any point of cultural. I can handle any point of whatever pisses me off in the world, and I don't get boxes and boxes and boxes of hate mail because I didn't attack your religion literally. I
Yeah.
just attacked the concept of it
Hmm.
that I find offensive, or I attack the dogma that I find constricting,
Hmm.
or I attack the sociological or cultural thing that pisses me off in the world, and I say, we could do this better.
Yeah.
And so I'll write a book and have one character do it better and get persecuted for it, maybe. I mean, this happens. People come up with a new idea, and almost every time there's a new idea, nobody wants to hear it because survival said, stay in the pack. If
Yeah.
you don't stay in the pack, you're going to get picked off because you'll be the one out there with no friends. So we have an inherent instinct not to go against the grain.
Hmm.
And I want to write books that write a very entertaining novel, but I'm going to have the glove off underneath of that, and I'm going to punch it square in the face as I see it. So that's why fantasy, because there is no restriction.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for a while there, I thought I was going into the sciences. I was studying science in college very heavily. I
Hmm.
studied microbiology, I studied marine biology, I studied astronomy, and I dumped it. I dumped it all. Not that I'm anti-scientific, I'm not.
Hmm.
I use science all the time. I still run my telescopes. I still follow all the NASA stuff. I still follow all the vaccine research. I still follow all the epidemiologists. I love science, but science has blinders on. If you can't quantify it, it doesn't exist.
Yes,
And
unfortunately,
here's
that's the.
another little anecdote. I used to be paid to run the telescopes for the astronomy department. So they would say, line this telescope up with this object so the students can view it. And I'm sitting there lining the telescopes up, and the students are looking. And I had 3 PhD astronomers in the department, one radio astronomer, they were all PhDs. And I look up and I go, what's that going by right there? We don't know. And I said, aren't you curious? And they go, nope, we can't write a paper on that. We'd be drummed right out of the industry. So I realized that science only looked at a very tiny slice of the pie. What they think they know and what they regard as absolute, and you have to replicate that experiment precisely every time or it isn't true,
Yeah.
negates the variability of experience itself. And if you look at quantum physics and you look at some of the experiments that were done where they shot a photon through a narrow, where it separated the photon out, and when
Sure.
there was
Yeah.
an observer, you got 1 point, and when there was no observer, you got a probability arc.
Right. Thomson double
Bingo.
slit experiment. Yeah.
Reality is not stable.
Hmm.
It's not as fluid as the conspiracy theorist thinks. You're not going to get me buying into chemtrails.
Right. Right. You got to have a nice balance there between understanding the mystery and
Exactly. So
appreciating.
that's where I walked out of science because I
Mhm.
said the technicians have more fun than the PhDs do.
Yeah.
I'd rather be the guy pointing the telescope because that's the cool stuff. But when it comes to days and days of crunching the math, and then 50% of what you're observing you can't speak of because it's off the envelope and
Mhm.
won't be socially acceptable to the rest of the community, and they can be nastier than the most poisonous group of fans, academia, which you would know.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I left and decided not to become a scientist because I didn't want to mire myself in those kind of limits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the artist tackles the human condition as directly as can be done, really, in a way, because of the direct use of the imagination on what you perceive. You think that's right?
Yeah, because you can't photographically replicate anything. It's always colored by your own. If you draw and you don't use digital art that starts with a swipe from a photograph, you can never replicate what a camera does.
Right.
Always your individual perception colors that image and changes it, and that gets you off into very weird rabbit holes where some people have speculated that 4 people look at this sofa in this living room and they all perceive that sofa in a slightly different way because they're reacting to something that isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're talking about how your eye interprets light. We're talking about
Yeah.
how your brain interprets what your eye perceives. It's an energy signature, and you're clothing it in our physical reality.
Like
But
that
you
whole
take
business
two
about
steps to the side, or you take 4 or 5 steps up mathematically, and this reality we're sitting in doesn't exist in that way.
mm-hmm.
And we've proven that. The numbers prove it.
Mm-hmm.
But people keep insisting, oh no, this is all there is. That's it.
There's the idea that like at the higher levels that a lot of like physicists talk about how maybe time doesn't exist or it's nonlinear, things like that. And what's interesting is I actually hear the same things from people who do like psychedelic therapy, and they take entheogens and whatnot, and they have these experiences where everything is happening all at once.
You can talk to people who don't take psychedelics, but their culture embraces that.
Yeah.
And they're perceiving totally differently than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Shockingly differently than we do, but we don't want to take the time of day to listen to them. Oh, they're primitive. They didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah, and it's always indigenous peoples they're picking on, isn't it? Always.
Or they're looking in their glasses have already hardened. They're missing it. It occurred to me, I was reading a book on primitive Welsh manuscripts.
Mm-hmm.
And they had diagrams of our cosmos and our solar system. And the people who know the Earth goes around the sun, and then here's Mars, and then here's...
Mm-hmm.
That's their picture of cosmology. They were looking at these diagrams and going, the Welsh were just too dumb to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Here they have this, and they have these planets grouped over here and over here and over here. And you look at that from another cultural lens and you realize they weren't mapping the physical cosmos according to orbits around the sun. They were mapping the energetic cosmos.
Mm.
And they were mapping it more along the lines of the way the astrologers do earth, air, fire, water. They were mapping an energetic signature. They were mapping... You can dig into sideways other cultures, the way the indigenous see,
Mm-hmm.
with the medicine wheel. There's an energetic signature to all of those things, and the Welsh were mapping it exactly that way. So the modern scientist that knows astronomy was looking at this with one eye and going, they didn't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for the Welsh, from their point of view, would have been saying these modern scientists don't have a freaking clue.
Yeah.
They put everything in concentric circles when there were groupings, there were energetic signatures. And so I get fascinated with stuff like that because we've thrown away more knowledge than we've saved.
Well, that's what got Carl Jung interested in alchemy, because the idea is that alchemy is kind of a failed chemistry, but he kind of looked at that from another perspective and said, actually, what they were doing was a type of psychology, and it makes a whole lot of sense when you look at it that way. You don't take the images literally, but rather as representations of inner dynamics.
But we wear the wrong pair of glasses and it's gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we building a society where education has become so rigid, and now anti-intellectualism is so rigid, we can't see sideways and say there's more than one interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And if we looked globally at the interpretation of what this means, it would open up whole new directions for thought and for science. I mean, at one point, the astronomy department in college hired me to go through the library and compile all the reference books that reference cosmology. So like, what is the Milky Way to an Aboriginal Australian? What is the Milky Way to somebody in Africa? What is it to the Inuit?
Right.
What is the Milky Way to the Chinese? What is the Milky Way to the Native Americans? What is Orion symbolize for all these different cultures, from Greek myth all the way to... And you know what dropped my jaw? Totally freaking blew me out of the water. When I got done, I spent a whole semester studying these reference books to pull out these tiny references. There was never a whole book on it. It was always a reference here, a paragraph there, thousands of books. Orion was always the hunter. The Seven Sisters was always the Seven Sisters.
Yeah.
the definition for the Milky Way changed drastically, but the constellations, for the most part, had a common root, and it didn't matter what culture you came from, which area of the globe you came from. They were the same. How did that happen?
Yeah.
How the heck did that happen?
Collective
I don't know
unconscious.
if anybody's ever taken the time to study it, but it just dropped my jaw. That the Inuit in Alaska, all the way to Australia, to the Dogon tribe, all are looking at Orion as the hunter,
Mm-hmm.
and the Seven Sisters and the Pleiades is the Seven Sisters, and their myths all centered. And it wasn't just those constellations.
Yeah.
So how do you get there from here?
Yeah, well, I can say that the Jungians definitely talk about that kind of stuff a lot, and they compare, and because the whole idea of the archetype is based on this concept that we may have all these different cultures and everything, but at the end of the day, humans think there are certain common patterns of the way that we organize the world, and one way is through the myth making. That,
well, the 12 archetypes that become the 24 that become.
Yeah. Well, there's that.
There goes another rabbit hole.
There's there's a lot of pop psychology around
that's why I wanted to be a writer, because you get to explore all that stuff. You get to listen to people, you get to hear things, you get to listen. I mean, I got to listen to one particular culture recite 40,000 years of their history orally. And it was really, really interesting, because what they remembered is a lot of what we have as myth. They remembered in their oral history how they had migrated from Atlantis, and which continent they landed on, and whose tribe became what tribe became. 40,000 years worth of oral history, and they don't normally talk to people and explain that. And I was privileged to sit there and hear it. It took 6 or 7 days.
Wow. That's amazing. Where was that?
Well, I don't want to necessarily say where it was, because then I would give away who was talking to me. They had permission to. It wasn't like they were telling me anything. I just don't feel comfortable, since there haven't been books published on this. It's their culture.
Sure. I understand that.
I had a chance to sit with a tribal elder in Australia, and it was all connected by a book tour and then a friend of mine that I met down there. And I got to sit there and listen to this man talk for a half an hour. And I didn't say anything much. I just listened to what he was saying. And what he did was he described what was happening in his territory, in his region, his tribe. And he started with what the weather was doing, and then what the animals were doing, and which animals were food animals and which ones were abundant. And then he went into what his people were doing, and what the young people in the tribe were doing, and how the parents were not teaching them certain things. And he didn't have a word for bad. He didn't have a word for evil. He didn't have a word for wrong. He only used, this is good, or this is not good. That was his differentiation. This is good. The parents were teaching the kids this is good. The weather was this is good, or this is not good. And when I walked away and I listened and I contemplated on what he was talking about, he was building a template this way of what was happening, and the weather, what the animals were doing, what the people were doing, what was good, what was not good. It was all connected. It was all connected. So he was giving me the energetic picture of how all this fit together, and where the good things were reinforcing the good things, and where the not so good things, this is not good, what was creating the disharmony all the way up to the weather. It was fascinating.
That does sound fascinating.
What we could learn if we would just drop our prejudice would blow the lid off of everything.
Well, yeah.
It's cool,
It's extremely cool. And like this, I remember coming across some studies of the different cognitive abilities of more, hunter-gatherer indigenous people. and how, like, traditionally, of course, there's always been this sort of post-colonial idea of them being primitive and all that crap, but they excel in things that most people raised in industrialized societies absolutely are horrible at, like understanding animal behavior and being connected to the way the weather patterns are and all this. And they're like local memory, where they can able to find things, is far superior. And so I can only imagine like what the way this guy would describe things was.
Yeah, it was really a privilege. It was just jaw-dropping. And, you know, here we are taking down the history of what happened to the Little Bighorn as we sit here today.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, God damn it, there's no limit to the number of idiots.
That is very true. I forget who said it, but it was something like the difference between evil and stupidity is that evil has limits.
It was probably Einstein.
Einstein, I think. Yeah,
probably
right.
Something close to that. But yeah, it's just very, very frustrating because the amount of erasure going on, and it's like, where are you taking us? Nowhere good.
Not good.
Not so good.
Definitely not good.
So yeah, it's very, very frustrating. So yeah, that's going to come out, but you can write about this stuff in fantasy. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
You will not be ostracized, and you will not have people out there saying, "Where's the pentagram on your lawn?"
Right.
Oh gosh, you know, we book illustrators, and we went away, and we had somebody house sit, and I didn't know it, but he was a writer, and he brought in his brand new Filipino wife who didn't know how to cook. She would just turn the stove on high and boil everything until it, you know, it was like probably she cooked over a fire.
Yeah, simple and effective.
But yeah, it was like she went around the house and dug up every single Bible she could find and put it open underneath of all the paintings she didn't like. It's just a book cover. It's fantasy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the people who painted the house, and they looked in the window, and we have Celtic knot patterns on the studio floor that we designed in the terrazzo, and it's a 4-sided square.
Yeah.
Built into knots.
Something like this.
And they said, pentagram. And I said, 4 sides, count them, 4. Pentagram, 5 sides. This does not have 5 sides.
Yeah, never mind the fact that Christian knights used to wear the pentagram on their tabards. That's another conversation.
I don't know. Whatever the case may be, it's like prejudice is everywhere, and it just
everywhere.
Creates barriers that are so unnecessary. At heart, we're all the same. We need to have a roof over our heads. We need to eat. We need to raise our children, and we need to learn.
And tell stories.
Why throw the lid on that, saying this is... If we could be free, as culturally free to express our individuality as we could our imagination, how colorful would our society look?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the suit and tie would have gone the long way around, gone a century ago. It's boring, right?
Yeah.
But, totally. You know, any kind of individuality or cosplaying, it's all looked on as, well, that's childish, and it's not at all.
No. It's instead of, you know, in favor of this sort of robotic idea of what adulthood is supposed to be.
Well, those people can have it.
They can stuff
it. Yeah, zip yourself into your little box until you suffocate. Mm-hmm. They can't be very happy.
No, and they certainly don't want anybody else to be.
True.
They seem like they don't. So you mentioned cover art, and you're also a painter, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I see one of yours in the background there.
Well, it's actually a reproduction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so is that...
The original's over my desk up there. You can't see it.
Oh, okay. I'll take your word for it.
It's an oil painting. The original is done in oil, the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Pencil, tracing paper, line drawing, transfer it onto no computers, no digital. I'm not giving up the ability to draw and paint for messing around on a screen. I hate it. I won't do it. Well, you lose something. A painting in a room changes according to the light, according to the season, how much red is in the atmosphere at sunset. Mm. The ambient lighting shifts, and paint layers are partially transparent. So the
Yeah.
way the pigments reflect the light, you can get stained glass windows effects by suspending that pigment in an oil layer. You'll never get that. A pixel is a pixel is a pixel. It will
Right.
never be anything different. And you'll never know if posterity decided to change your image.
It's flat and yeah, right.
Yeah, it looks great on first, but there's no mystery to it. A painting has that living quality.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense.
It interacts with the environment and the ambient lighting, which a
So
pixel doesn't do. It's
if
just a pixel is a pixel is a pixel.
a painting becomes context dependent, unlike a digital, which is always the same no matter what. Is that basically the truth of it?
The pixel is always going to be that exact
The exact same
same
thing no
thing.
matter what. Yeah. Whereas an actual physical painting becomes a part of its environment and interacts with it and embeds itself.
And even as it ages, it becomes something different over time too.
Right. So it's also, yeah, okay. So it's a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
So to me, it's a much richer experience.
Mhm.
Takes a lot more work to make it,
Sure.
no question about it. But to me, it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. And have you been doing that as long as you've been
As long
planning
as
your
I've been an artist,
writing?
I've done that.
Yeah.
The only time I ever had to resort to anything digital was when the ebooks were created from backlist titles, and in order to do the art, I had to do it that fast. And I took my own art and cannibalized it. I did not take it from somebody else. I took my own painting from a prior cover and recombined things
Mm-hmm.
to make those covers happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what are you working on now?
I'm working on the sequel to The Gallant, which was a short story that took one of the characters that appears in the main series and gives his back history.
Mm.
And the sequel goes in crazy directions because it's really like opening the can of worms beneath certain little one-line things that I didn't show all of what there was to show.
Mm.
So you're going to see areas of the world that you did not know existed and histories about them that you did not know existed. So it's always covering new ground.
So when you were first writing your first drafts, did you struggle deciding how much of all that backstory that you had written for it?
Mm-mm.
Like asking yourself,
Nope.
like, how much of this do I want to put
Nope.
in your, no?
Nope.
Okay.
Because I had a really good teacher as a playwright. He was a playwright who worked with me in college. And he said, every single page of your manuscript and every single paragraph that you write, you need to have a very sharp picture in your mind of what is at stake.
Mm-hmm.
So if it didn't relate to what was happening on the page and what was at stake, if it didn't bear on the character's situation, if a past threat didn't have an echo or reverberation or a reason to be there to build the tension on the page,
Yeah.
didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
So I will sometimes put something in to build the mood of a set piece to give you the feeling of the history, but it bears on the character's actions and words in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
So it's setting the backdrop for the current picture. Otherwise, I didn't put it in.
Mm-hmm. And that was the guide.
Yep.
To
Did it
to the scout.
have relevance to this particular scene? Was it building the scene, the mood of the scene? In which case you might have a sentence or a mention, but it's not going to be pages. It's not going to be a paragraph. It's not going to be an info dump.
Yeah.
Did a character stumble across a piece of history and wonder about it? So that would relate to the character. Did that wondering about it reflect the character's mood or the character's situation?
Mm-hmm.
Did it bear on what they were doing? If it didn't, out it goes.
Yeah, I noticed that you did that with To Ride Hell's Chasm, very much so. I mean, it's like you said, it's within 5 days, the whole story, and yet you feel like it's much larger than that because of the stuff that's in the background, but it never felt like an info dump. And then there's another thing that you had where the witch thoughts and you could see what was going on outside of your immediate awareness helped to create the context while it was embedded in the current ongoing like you say, stakes and
It connects it.
Mhm.
So, you know, something like
I really
the
appreciate it.
outside the walls market, there was that scene in Hell's Chasm where Taskin goes to visit the storyteller, or Mikhail does. He goes to visit the storyteller, and he's in the outside market.
Mhm.
That scene framed the backdrop for what was actually happening, which was an exchange of information. Mikhail was trying to find a name. But the sense of that scene, you have a sense of this market happened before this. It sprouts up like a mushroom every day,
Mhm.
and it's going to go on tomorrow and tomorrow and
Right.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
So giving that backdrop, the sense of continuity, gives the story that framework of continuity too.
Mhm.
But you don't do it by wasting space. You do it by building the characters into that scene. So it was a backdrop, but it gave you the sense of Cecily as a kingdom has a history to it. Every day has a history to it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
That's what makes it feels lived in.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff that's going on in the background of the scene, it doesn't weigh it down any, but it just kind of reminds you that this is not just a character in a little tiny bubble, you know, like a video game where nothing happens outside of what the character is, you know, not that, but that you're in this dynamic environment all the time.
And what those characters do in that environment is going to affect that environment.
Right. Right. So there's a constant
Disrupt it or sneak through it without disrupting it.
Right.
You know, everything has to relate to what the character is doing and feeling and what's at stake for that character. And if it doesn't build on any of those fronts, you don't have room for it.
You got to leave it in the appendix or whatever. Do you have like volumes of backstory and stuff like tucked away in a corner somewhere
To what?
to your big series?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's boxes,
Oh wow.
notebooks. Yeah, because I spent all those decades developing.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can draw on that. But if you say it's easier to write a brand new book on the brand new, totally unstructured background where I'm doing it all at once, like the next novel I'm working on doesn't relate to anything I've done before, it's very freeing because you're not tied down to all that
Yeah.
structure.
And all that stuff that you've developed and you've got
Writing the sequel to Varian's story in The Guardian, it's taking 2 years because everything in it has to connect. So I have to know all the way across the board what every other faction is doing.
Yeah.
I have to know all of the history and
Yeah.
all of the future history. Has this even happened yet?
Mm-hmm.
And so making all those connections is really, really time consuming. And then threading the plot through that and then deciding what to show, what do you not show.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I often run into
Any
that.
time I write in an existing universe, it's always much harder.
Yeah.
I just finished a short story written prequel to the novel I have out on submission, and I had to make it fit into everything. And so I had 5 weeks to write it. It was a 5-week job to be sure that I didn't disarrange anything that was coming later, and to be sure that it didn't disarrange anything that I know the character's back history included.
Yeah. I run into that. I totally relate to that because I've written so much stuff for my series that I'll write something. And it's like, wait a minute, what was this kingdom doing at this time? I totally forgot. I wrote that.
You have to know it all. You have to know it all the way across the whole platform.
Mm-hmm.
And the platform's pretty big. In the case of the Light and Shadows universe, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah.
So to work out a story, I've got probably 10 different shorts, all in various fragments, because that intensity of working everything out and then getting the perfect plot to fit into all those. It's like Chinese puzzle with numbers, you know, those little number squares you used to. Kids don't play that game anymore, but we did in the car going on long trips. You know, the one where you slotted the numbers and you tried to make them all consecutive.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember those. Sure.
It feels like that.
Yeah, definitely. And then some of the stuff you haven't worked on for decades, and so you have to go back to it and go, what in the hell was going on at this point in this history? And
well,
this
actually, I have
or whatever.
I have pretty good notes because every time I wrote a note or every time I filled up a notebook with various pieces of history, I took the dates that those events happened and I put them in a file drawer.
Mm.
So I have file, literally paper file. I don't use electronic for any of this. It's all on paper. So I can go, oh, what happened in the third era in
Hmm.
this age and this date? Bang. In the file drawer, it'll indicate what that was.
Hmm.
So it's tough when you're trying to pick out regional history because everything is in consecutive order by year. So taking one city, say, and going back 5,000 years, how many times was it ruined? How many times was it rebuilt? Who rebuilt it? Which war wrecked it?
Right.
Which sections are still in ruins? Which people left? Which people came in? Who's the predominant? To get a regional history, I got to sort through all those files
Yeah.
and pull out the name of that town. So in those cases, often I'll have a regional history in a notebook where I've written down all the dates and all the things.
Yeah.
So yeah, electronically it'd be much faster to pick that out, but it would also be much clumsier because inconsistencies would appear that you'll pick up because you'll see it on paper faster than on a screen where you can only see it one thing at a time.
Right.
And also what happens when it crashes and burns.
Then what?
And I don't put anything in the cloud. I do not trust the cloud. Everything I have is triply, quadruply backed up, and I use no cloud services at all.
Hmm.
It's all right here.
Yeah.
And as soon as I hit I back up my writing every single day, and when it hits a certain stage, then I print a hard copy.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it can't get lost. I had my hard drive die within 2 months of finishing, 3 months of finishing the finale of Song of the Mysteries. My hard drive completely fried.
Wow.
And it was a Mac, and I had to emergency start it. But I did not lose one piece of data because I had everything backed up.
Hmm.
Paper print, everything
That's a
backed up.
smart way to go. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me for a little bit. Just obviously scratched the surface of a wealth of things that we could discuss. You have,
Eric, it's been a joy because you're obviously with your background, you have gone sideways down rabbit holes more than many people. And I wish we could have more discussions like this on Booktube and on the internet
well,
because so many times when writers venture that territory, it is not understood.
yeah. Well, maybe you and I can do something about that. Maybe we can have some more discussions in the future.
Who knows?
Who knows? Possibly. Well, again, thanks for coming on, and I really, really appreciate it. This has been fantastic, and hopefully we'll get to talk again soon in the future.
That would be fun.
All right.